We're live? Yeah. Great.
Yes,
Thank you. We made it. Hi, Kathy.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, guys.
Hello, hello.
How are you?
Hello. Well, let's kick it off then. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining today's session. My name is Mariana Chavez. I'm originally from Mexico and I work at Women Win as programs coordinator. Joining me today is my colleague Mia and a couple of guest speakers, Kathy and Jihan. But first things first, Mia, would you like to introduce yourself to the group?
Yes, thanks, Mariana. My name is Mia. I'm a program coordinator at Women Win as well, based in the United States, working on our gender equity and inclusion in sport work and working with Mariana and the rest of the Women Win team on gaming and esports projects, which brings us here to this incredible conference.
Thank you, Mia. Should we start sharing our screen?
Yes.
Great.
Let me know when you can see it.
Yeah, we can see it. Thank you. Let me first introduce you to Women Win. So Women Win is a global fund for women, guided by the vision of a future where every girl and woman exercises their rights. Through our initiative Girls, we use physical sports as a tool for girls and young women to exercise the right to play, address gender-based violence, learn about their sexual and reproductive health and rights, and advance their economic resilience. And you might be wondering what a Girls' Rights for Sport nonprofit is doing here. But today, Mia and I would like to introduce you Women Win's most recent endeavor, Onside Gaming. Before we get to it, I should explain what the Onside Fund is. And please, if you have any questions at any moment, just write them down in the chat box so we can discuss them during the Q&A session later today. So back in 2019, in very pre-COVID times, Women Win did some thinking and held gatherings and conversations and days of dialogue with our partners and our network to really explore what feminism looks like in sport for development. Then COVID hit, and we quickly realized, as many did, that significant gains in girls' and women's rights were under threat, and that this included gains made for girls' and women's access to sport and all the benefits that accompany that access. Above all, in the context of a global pandemic, we understand that girls with multiple identities were definitely feeling the impacts of the pandemic more. Girls from historically marginalized communities, girls in poverty with disabilities, and LGBTQIA plus communities. So this brought us back to a question at Women Win that we continuously ask ourselves. How do we strive to really reach the most marginalized girls through sports programs? In consultation with our regional on-site community of sport and girls' rights activists, our partners, and our just overall global network, we started designing a fund that would support hyperlocal solutions, focus on building back better, and be and look like a more equitable playing field. The Onside Fund seeks to foster a sustained feminist movement that reimagines and transforms sport through participatory and equitable approaches to decision-making, funding, and learning. We seek to facilitate meaningful dialogue between different actors and strengthen opportunities for historically silenced voices. We actively look to support all cis, trans, and all other underrepresented groups and communities such as Black, Indigenous, Mestizas, people of color, LGBTQIA plus communities, non-binary people, refugees, migrant girls, and women with or without disabilities. Moreover, the Onside Fund holds a broad view of sport to include all forms of physical sport and play-based activities, whether that's competitive or non-competitive, anything really that promotes physical and mental well-being. So when designing and building this fund, and Mia, we can move to the next slide, our main objective was to develop mechanisms that really aligned with feminist and decolonized philanthropy principles as closely as possible. Women Win acted as the fiscal agent, and we designed a pool funding approach that really allow us to bring up together a variety of stakeholders and funders to increase their impact and investment. Rather than requiring very long, arduous reporting, we developed an online learning hub to bring together grantees for quarterly knowledge sharing and feedback loops. We brought together an advisory committee and set up a shared governance structure which included collective decision-making about the design and the implementation of the fund. Fast track to the application process. This process yielded invaluable information on the status of sport for adolescent girls and young women and how this changes from one region to the other. Mia, can you move? Yeah, great, thank you. Through the application process, we were able to see in real time the thematic areas of work and the regions of applicants. We discovered new feminist ways of organizing and decision-making, not to mention the long list of sports that we discovered, sports that we never really heard of, but were completely different and reinventing the wheel. During the first round, the Onside Fund supported 32 groups from more than 25 different countries and re-granted a total of $200,000. Given the high number of applicants who did not receive funding in its first round, we set up regional peer review panels to go back to this pool of short and long listed applications and select the second cohort of grantees, which will be announced actually in the next couple of weeks. So out of the 836 applications that you see on screen and that were received, only 2 of them had a focus on gaming or esports. We know that, especially with mobility and gathering restrictions around the world due to the COVID pandemic, esports and gaming are gaining further traction and relevance. Despite the increase in numbers, these online spaces can also be places of brutal harassment and abuse, unhealthy and oppressive pressure and predatory practices that mirror the sexual and gender-based violence, discrimination, and harassment that girls and women experience in the physical world. Therefore, we decided to create a specific call for proposals that focused on gaming and esports to advance gender justice, Onside Gaming. With that, Mia, the floor is yours.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mariana, for that wonderful segue into our specific call for proposals, which is our Onside Gaming initiative. It's launching on November 25th, and that will be when the call for applications launches. So as Mariana described, the Onside Gaming Fund is a sub-fund of the broader Onside Fund that will specifically focus on funding solutions to advance gender justice in and through gaming and esports. We as Women Win are keenly aware that there's already a movement happening. It's being built, sustained within the gaming and esports realm that advocates for gender equity and inclusion and advances the rights of girls and women and other marginalized genders within the space. So we know that this work is already being done. We are looking to put resources in the hands of the folks who are doing the work on the ground, whatever that looks like in their own communities, as well as connect people who are doing this work through a learning hub and drive forward this movement with a cross-sector and global collaboration that really reimagines gaming and esports for girls and women. So here we have our vision and mission of the Onside Gaming Fund, where girls and women exercise their right to play, and it will drive a sustained cross-sector movement that reimagines and transforms gaming and esports for women and girls. And similarly to our Onside Global call, we define girls and women inclusively. All cis and trans and all underrepresented groups are included within that, as well as non-binary individuals. So why now? As many of you are definitely aware, girls and women are on the rise in gaming and esports. The most recent numbers are that female identifying individuals make up about 45% of gamers in the United States and upwards of 40% in other markets such as Asia and the East Pacific. And this number is only climbing around the world. And as Mariana noted, despite the rise in numbers, these spaces are often, sites of brutal online bullying, toxicity, harassment, and systematic exclusion and inequity. At Women Win, our partners across the world have recounted that girls and women participating in their traditional sports programs are accessing online spaces with little to no support about how to navigate a space that wasn't necessarily created for them in mind. And they're being met with threats and violence that mirror the risks that they face in their physical world, with less and less support to do so. So in spite of, or maybe perhaps in response to these challenges, we know that girls and women across the world are leveraging gaming platforms and communities to advance gender justice and advocate for digital inclusion. We're seeing adolescent girls and young women coming together to create alternative visions of what they want gaming and esports to be like, how they want to operate, organize, advocate, and have greater control over the tools and resources they need to do so. And so for Women Win, as an outsider to the gaming and esports space, but a longtime advocate for the empowerment of girls and women, we feel there's an opportunity to provide support to folks looking to advance this movement. And we want to ensure that the voices that are at the center of this movement are those of girls and young women. We want to ensure that they are the catalyst for change and are supporting hyperlocal as well as global solutions. We want to help make this impact sustainable with community building and resources to focus on that relentless progress forward to make sure that the gains and momentum is not lost. And together, we will build a more equal playing field. Onside Gaming wants to bridge the gap between the virtual and the physical pitch by using the power of online gaming and esports to create social change that empowers girls and creates more gender equitable communities, both on and offline. So the Onside Gaming Fund will primarily serve as the vehicle to ensure that strategic investment in that there is strategic investment in a movement that reimagines and transforms esports and gaming for girls and women. We'll do this by providing core financial support to girl and women-led groups around the world. We hope to consolidate the recent gains made in this movement and drive further the momentum in women's gaming at all levels. We will distribute resources for the tried and the true approaches, but also new and radical solutions from grassroots activism and cross-sector collaboration. We, with the fund, hope to challenge oppression and inequalities in gaming and esports systems and structures around the world. And we hope to do this by mobilizing contributions from multiple stakeholders to contribute to a long-term impact with cross-sectoral investment. And on that note, I want to talk about the fund mechanics as they are integral to the novel approach of this kind of fund that Mariana described earlier, and primarily focus here on the bottom three. So as Mariana noted, the Onside initiative is a pooled fund. So Onside Gaming will pool funds that are anchored by contributions from funding and sponsors from around the globe that represent different sectors and industries. We pool resources from corporates and brands, foundations, individuals who are authentically invested in building this movement and invested in seeing the landscape change for girls and women in esports and gaming. There will be a huge emphasis on learning so that we can gain deeper insights and share knowledge about where there are gaps and what innovative approaches are successful, where there are barriers, how people have overcome those barriers. We're going to utilize online communities, social Discord servers, curated virtual sessions and exchanges in order to promote the learning aspect of this fund. We also hope to make this learning actionable and share it with other movement partners in order to do so. And as Mariana described, the shared governance approach of the Onside initiative is also true in Onside Gaming. So we've set up processes that reflect a shared power structure, which includes distributing decision-making power through participatory governance structures that are really bottom-up and that aim to intervene in existing disparities in power through these ways of working and the mechanisms that we've created. And an example of this is the creation of the Onside Gaming Advisory Committee, who you will hear from a few of them later today. Members of this advisory committee are young leaders in the gaming and esports sector who are advocates for and passionate about advancing gender justice in and through gaming and esports. Our committee members come together and review the design decisions that need to be made before the fund is announced, and then we'll participate in the selection process of selecting grantees, ensuring a fully participatory grant-making process. And while the fund hasn't launched yet, it's our intention that in future rounds of this funding, previous grantees will form regional peer review panels to select the next cohort of grant recipients in order to create that cascading effect of impact and change. So on that, I want to show you the advisory committee. Here's the group of 8 incredible women we have on our advisory committee. They represent 5 different countries, 3 different regions, and come from a variety of backgrounds within the sector, including nonprofits, corporates, education and collegiate esports, I think game developers. And this is really the governing body that is tasked with providing guidance on the strategic direction of the fund and participate in key governance and grant-making decisions. So they advise and support on decision-making on the key design of the Onside Gaming Fund. So that's everything from who the fund will target, what the eligibility requirements are, what the size and grants are of, the size of the grants and the duration of the grants. And that's all up to this group to collectively decide. And we recognize that at Women Win, we don't know the space as well as the people who have, been here, have been doing work in it, understand the needs of folks in the industry who are looking to make change. What is the price point that will be able to help them do that? So we love to be able to be a part of these conversations and really see the decisions being made by this advisory committee. Right now, we're meeting every couple of weeks to have these kinds of conversations and have seen really rich debate about how this fund can and should support impactful initiatives and give rise to a movement of girls and women globally. One example of something we do that I'd love to show you is our principles. At the outset of the committee, we set up the values and principles of the Onside Gaming Advisory Committee to help guide our work in a collaborative and supportive way. So we had each committee member kind of give their most important principle about their work as an advisory committee member. We revisit these principles ahead of all of the decision-making as a way to ground the group in ways of working that everybody is committed to. And I, was impressed then, I'm impressed now that we have words like global equity, meaningful advocacy, space for questions and inclusivity, being authentic, storytelling, mindfulness, collaboration. I think these all really speak to the heart of the Onside Gaming Initiative and the folks we have spearheading it. And it really is a beautiful process to be a part of. So next, we will have actually a chance to have a conversation with some of our very own Onside Gaming Advisory Committee members. I will ask some questions I know I'm curious about, but I would also encourage folks to add questions in the chat if they have anything that they want to know from our advisory committee members. And with that, it's my privilege to be able to be joined here today with 3 of our advisory committee members who will share their perspectives really on why they got involved in this initiative, the impact that they hope the Onside Gaming Fund has, and the experience of being part of this type of shared governance model. I will let each person introduce themselves. So Kathy, Jihan, Mariana, if you all could include your name, maybe the organization that you work for, and a little bit of background as to what got you interested in joining the Onside Gaming Initiative. I think that would be great. And Kathy, would you mind kicking us off?
Yeah, sure thing. So hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. My name is Kathy Chong, and I am currently wrapping up 10 years at the University of California, Irvine. And I was a student there for 5 years, and then I worked there for 5 years, so about a decade. And as a student, I was an organizer for grassroots esports as well. So basically a decade of esports, all in Irvine, California. And I've just been really involved in, pushing initiatives that I think are including more people and more faces on our campus, and also thinking about the ways that we evolve from a grassroots student initiative to something that's more administratively supported and structured and recognized as like a legitimate program that we can then give back to our students in great ways. So that's kind of my background, just, collegiate community education, really have a passion for the work that we're doing here. And in terms of motivations for getting involved, I first heard about Onside gaming as just something that was showing up that I had never heard of. I'd never heard of Onside before, Women Win. So I was doing a little bit of research and was just really inspired by all the really cool work that's been going in the sports world. And hearing about that coming to esports was, for me, kind of surprising, because I think a lot of initiatives that currently exist aren't quite as structured. And I was very interested in learning more, just to see what these different practices are, and just learning more as an individual, and also hoping that I can contribute, because as Mia and Mariana say, although they call themselves, outsiders, they've put so much effort into making sure that the committee is, inclusive and actually part of people that have been doing this for a really long time. So I look really forward to the changes that we're able to make through this fund.
Thank you so much, Kathy. And it's a credit to people like you who have welcomed us and all of our questions about esports and gaming as we continually try and learn. And you all have been such an excellent resource for us to continue that learning journey. So I appreciate it. Jihan, would you like to introduce yourself next?
Yeah. Hey, guys. I am Jihan. I am the co-founder and CEO of Beatbotics, an esports and gaming awareness company for Black and Brown people from underrepresented areas. And I am currently in Irvine, going to UCI to get my PhD in informatics so I could build video games for children of color. And so what brought me to Onside, like Kathy, I did not know anything about this. I'm just a mom. I'm a mom that was in education for 15 years, but then saw the disparities that Black and Brown people lack when it comes to access to esports and gaming. And I wanted to close that digital divide through that lens. So I wanted to also to be a true representation. But what brought me to Onside Gaming Fund was the inclusivity part. To know that I can show up to a boardroom and truly authentically be myself, but be a representation and voice for people that look like me, not just here within the United States, but on a global lens. I'm both a representation of the Black community, but then also the Hispanic community. So to be able to juggle it, but then just to show up for women in general, and coming together collectively and making a change so that we all have equality and equity. That was really, really what brought me in. But then to see you all's passion and being able to do research and learn about it, but then see the global impact that you are causing, I wanted to be a part of this change, and I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. And we are so excited to have you and your authentic self on this board, and really appreciate all of the input and value and insight you have into all of your different communities. And you also as a newcomer to the gaming and esports space. And I think it's also important to note that your co-founder of Beatbotics is your son. Isn't that right?
Yes, my 13-year-old son is my co-founder because he is a gamer, and I want other kids to have the same type of access that he's been privy to. Economic power, economic status shouldn't get in the way. It's all about creativity, and we need to bring that back to education and to the youth when it comes to marginalized communities, especially women.
Yeah, absolutely love it. And Mariana, I know you introduced yourself at the beginning, but I would also kind of love to hear what interested you in being part of the Onside Gaming Initiative at Women Win, and then being an advisory committee member as well.
Yeah, well, thank you, Mian. Yeah, you've heard a bit about my background. I do not have any interesting things to share about gaming or esports on my background, but I was very fortunate to be part of the Onside font design phase. And of course, this was thought of like physical sports, but at its core, what's really advancing gender justice for girls and women everywhere and for marginalized communities. So it's been a true privilege to be in conversations and to be in spaces where we're just learning. I think that has been the greatest privilege that I've had, to be involved with conversations with Kathy when we first met, with Jihan when we first heard about her projects. And throughout this 2-year process, we've been engaging in very meaningful and very thoughtful conversations. And something that really stands out for me is how open and welcoming and warm the community has been with us. Really, we acknowledge that we don't have the expertise at all. We come, yeah, open to learn, and people just have been really open, especially like this opportunity. For example, we've never thought that we'd be speaking at a Women in Games conference, especially at the start of this process. So it's been quite a privilege, and it's been very exciting for me to just see how this fund continues to grow, and how more and more we can contribute to a more equitable playing field, regardless of if it is in a physical or digital space. It doesn't really matter. What matters is that girls, women, they get to play, and they get to play in an environment that's safe and that supports them and makes them thrive. So that's really what my experience has been so far, being part of the Onside Fund and Onside Gaming. And yeah, I'm just really glad to be here. Very fortunate.
Awesome. Thanks, Mariana. And I echo those sentiments as well. I think Women Win has been on a learning journey ever since its founding, really. But I think recently, this thinking about how gaming and esports can be involved in our work has been a really exciting process to be a part of. I know that within, like internally, we're talking about gaming and esports. Folks had not had a lot of experience with it. We're kind of looking into games, and we actually, as a team, started playing Among Us on our phones, and it caught on like wildfire. There was a point where everyone was on, internally talking like, let's get on a game, let's all Zoom together and play Among Us. And it, again, I think goes to the power of how it can create connection and community during a COVID pandemic when no one was working together. And it definitely is another testament to the power of this kind of work. So just wanted to echo Mariana and say that it's been a really joyous process to be a part of. So I want to kind of transition now, as we've all talked about kind of what brought you here, and maybe talk a little bit about what it is that you actually do on the Onside Gaming Advisory Committee and what your experience has been thus far. I wonder, Jihan, maybe if you could talk a little bit about what are some of the responsibilities that you have on the Onside Gaming Advisory Committee.
Yeah, so it's pretty much thinking through the process of development, of making sure that when we speak to the importance of women win, and speak to the importance of young girls, and all women, including, that we're really making sure that we're showing up for them, that we're a true representation. So we do that by making sure that the language is inclusive. We make sure that the design part of it speaks to our audience, so that it's no shuffling through words or verbiage to actually understand. We make sure that it's clear and concise verbiage, so that women feel like they're part of a community and part of a safe space. But what I really love is that we all get to show up and put our own individual input on it, and we're actually heard. A lot of times when you're on these advisory boards, your voices go unheard, or a lot of people sit in silence because they know if they speak up, they may get an evil eye. Here, everybody comes together collectively, whether it's a disagreement with a word, or we all have to go back and research to make sure that we're fitting the right words collectively in a sentence. But one of the things that I truly love is just the inclusivity, to where everybody can really truly authentically be themselves during this decision process, and making sure that we are reaching all women across the globe when it comes to esports and gaming, and building this fund so that it has equity and people can speak about it around the world.
Yes, awesome. Thanks so much, Jihan. And I agree, that's been a lot of learning that we've done as well about how to make sure that everyone can see themselves reflected in this fund, and the language that we use to describe the people that we want to support has been so important, and a continuous learning journey. But your all input there is of vital importance, and we really appreciate everyone participating in those conversations and continuing to educate us and us all. Kathy, do you have any thoughts on any of the key learnings or takeaways that you've had as a result of your participation in these kinds of conversations and on the Onside Gaming Advisory Committee?
Yeah, I would say kind of what I mentioned in the introduction as well, but I've been really inspired by learning about the process of how funding even works in the first place, and how there's so many different options for how we can identify the best recipients, how to make sure that the news gets out through all of our respective networks, that the right people are applying that we really want to make sure are supported and don't always have the opportunities to be supported in the ways that they need. So that's been an amazing journey, just learning about how important it is, like the wording, as Jihan says, the importance of making sure that people feel that this is calling to them and it's not just another fund that, oh, that's out of reach or is for someone else. And I think that's, I've been pretty motivated by seeing all those discussions. And from a gaming perspective, like I've obviously been in games for a while now, and I'm not super old, right? So I've just kind of been playing since I was a kid, so it feels like I've been a part of this community for so long. And even I am constantly learning about the different niches and types of gamers and gaming communities that are out there. There really isn't just like one big bubble that encompasses all of gaming and esports, and I recognize that. My background really being in education and some of the more highly visible esports games and titles within the collegiate space and the professional space, and learning about charity streamers, learning about teaching people about health and wellness within gaming, and all these things that I've known existed for the past 10 years, but I haven't really heard from the experts and heard their experiences, especially in the perspective of creating something that is supposed to be so life-changing and inclusive, where everyone's bringing these different perspectives from their past experiences with gaming and also outside of gaming, from sports. I did not play sports growing up. I don't know anything about sports ball. So seeing all this cool, inspirational stuff from the sporting world brought into esports, I think we are taking a lot of those positive elements of physical sports and, implementing it in the digital world as well. So all of this has been learning. I've been learning so much, even though I'm a self-proclaimed expert in certain things within gaming. There's just so much stuff still. And everyone on the advisory committee and everyone at Women Win has been really, really integral to that process.
Yeah, I love that. Sports ball cracks me up. I'm curious, so going off of that, Kathy, I think your experience in collegiate esports and seeing just youthful activism and kind of the collectivizing and organizing that happens at the college level, is there something that you see as being potentially high impact for the Onside Fund in targeting groups that are used to that kind of organizing and movement building?
Yeah, I would say, well, first of all, it's like one of the biggest networks of activism, in my opinion, where students are constantly finding like-minded individuals on their campuses. And when that is the first time you're meeting people face to face that care about the things that you do, you can talk about your favorite games with them. And then you also share your shared struggles. And I think like the light bulb went off for me in college when I met all these other gamers on my campus, met all these other clubs at other campuses, and we just started talking about like, why are we the only 3 girls at this event? Or why are we seeing these things that aren't changing? Or game developers haven't started talking about these things yet. And this is a while back. Now it's gotten a lot better. But I would say colleges are so important to identifying activism within this space. And something that I think is really high impact is that students are creating these communities of their own in a hyper-localized way and having conversations about things like, how do we make our own members have a better experience? What are elements of this that need to be discussed on a broader scale across the industry? And they're able to push for that. There is leveraging power behind these large institutions that have reputation, both in the nation and also, globally. And I think I would love to shout out an example, the Cal Women in Gaming Club at Cal Berkeley. Obviously a sister school, but they've been doing I think one of the first clubs that to do like a woman-focused esports initiative where they acknowledged that some of their co-ed activities, the normal esports club, despite being co-ed, despite being open to all membership, was not seeing the level of diversity that people wanted to see. And just because of that, it was, less encouraging for more women to show up or more people from marginalized genders. And I think that they started this movement where other schools were like, really on the fence about doing, women specific activities. But once that started and they started like a mentorship program, they've been doing events that are open to everyone, but really encouraging people from marginalized communities to participate. And we see this kind of, snowball effect where everyone is just so energized and realizing that these conversations have to happen. And this discourse that I think higher ed is great for is, like a home of all this amazing discussion around what needs to happen and, ways that people want to see change. So I hope that a lot of collegiate background people, maybe at this conference or people that hear about our fund, can also think of their club or their, grassroots organization, their nonprofit that they're working on the side with a couple of friends are all great potential grantees for this fund as well.
Yeah, definitely. And you have such a keen insight into the web and the movements that are being built through the collegiate esports space. And I love that you shouted out the Cal Berkeley team and all of the cascading effects that has about visibility and role models and mentorship. I know that those are all themes that have been really present in our discussions about the impact of just getting funding in order to access that next level and being then visible to others and inspiring change that way. And agreed, I think universities seem to be a great place for this type of discourse and discussion and activism. And so just want to echo that if any and all people who want to apply for this fund are doing collegiate esports, have done collegiate esports, and that's informed what they are doing now, we'd love to hear from you. Mariana, I kind of want to pass it over to you and ask about what some of your key learnings and insights have been. As you mentioned, you're not necessarily familiar with the esports space, but I think you are familiar with the process of creating a shared governance structure. And so I'm curious about maybe what this group brings that's a little different, or how this experience has been, new or insightful for you.
Definitely. Thank you, Mia. It has been really interesting to compare, and as I said earlier, I've been fortunate to be part of the Onside Global, as we've called it, the Onside Global Fund. And although shared governance, it's pretty similar in its structure, it has been very interesting to be in these conversations with Kathy and Jihan and other members of the Onside Gaming Advisory Committee, just because of the different backgrounds that each one of you bring. It creates a very rich conversation and a very rich dialogue in which, yes, we're here for the same North Star or guiding star, but everyone really brings a different voice or a different perspective coming from different sectors. So maybe, Kathy, yes, you really know the collegiate sports sector, but Jihan really knows about starting your own business with this in mind and learning from even your son. That's such a unique perspective. And we have just a variety of voices in this advisory committee that I think, compared to the previous one, of course everyone brings their unique perspective, but in a way, and maybe it's because we don't have as much experience in gaming and esports compared to sport for development, but this really feels that with each session, we're learning new things about the space. And it's just been a wonderful experience to hear each one's inputs and feedback, and just the decision-making process has been really rich. And I think this was already mentioned earlier, the way that we really take things slow and analyze the wording. I think there's so much power in the way that we write and the way that we express and the way that it can be very excluding or inclusive. So I think that's something that I really appreciate about the OGAC, as we've come to know it, that we really take the time and effort to make sure that everyone that we're hoping will apply for on-site gaming feels identified with the fund. That I think has been really rich.
Yeah, it's so encouraging to hear, because I know that that's really the purpose of these shared governance mechanisms. It would be to diversify the voices that are involved in making decisions, right? And so I think as an advisory committee, what we hope to do is actively facilitate that collective decision-making process. And I would be curious to hear from you all, do you feel that the Onside Gaming Fund is achieving this? And if so, I mean, why or why not, I guess? Jihan, do you mind kicking us off?
Sure. I do feel like we're achieving it because we're not, there are a lot of times, there are a lot of corporations when they are setting these fundings aside that pretty much have structured already with verbiage for it, but aren't reaching targeted audience. It's just super, super generic. With us, we're actually, like Mariana said, we're taking our time and going through the words and making sure that it speaks to people. For instance, you may have a young girl that is super, super inspired to be a gamer, but if she goes on these other places that are asking for information, she may not even have the littlest thing of documentation. So we really have to look at the bigger scope of, do the people that we're trying to get in the industry, specifically women, coming from certain countries where they lack access, how can we make sure that we are providing the resources that they need so they can dream big? And so in order for us to do that, we have to take our time to make sure it speaks to all areas, but also make sure that women and young girls are encouraged to know that, hey, you have an opportunity in this space too. And when we do that, then that opens up the flood doors for a lot of things, because specifically from a Black and Brown perspective, the biggest thing that we lack in our community is education and resources. And if they know that these types of funding are out here to support us, then they can dream big and they can actually become girl gamers. Specifically, and I'll say this in Atlanta, where I just came from, there are a lot of girl gamers, but they don't really show their appreciation for gaming because it's male dominated and they get really, really intimidated. So to know that this funding exists, that they can show up authentically as a nice little girl gamer, have a safe space, but be able to create a platform of their own is really important when it comes to us talking about and facilitating this funding going forward.
Definitely. And I think it's encouraging to think about how, that girl gamer, and I know that as part of one of our activities, we've kind of thought about who the dream on-site gaming applicant has been, and we all went around drawing who our dream or ideal on-site gaming applicant was. But I think, as you said, that girl gamer who sees herself reflected or themselves reflected in the language that we're using, and then having access to the community of people who are also driven by that mission, and being able to be part of that community, to know that they're not isolated, they're not alone, they're not doing this work by themselves, but really being able to be part of this movement and feeling like it's a safe space to do so. So I appreciate your answer, Jihan. Kathy, I'm a little curious. I want to kind of nod to something you had mentioned earlier about the way that this fund kind of brings a little bit more structure to, as compared to other funds that you've seen in the gaming and esports industry. I'm curious if you could elaborate a little bit about how on-site gaming is a little bit different maybe than other funds that you're aware of, or how it might be similar.
Right. I'm definitely no expert when it comes to, funding boards and grants out there, but coming from higher education, most of all the grants that I've heard of are, you have to kind of go out there and search for them, and you have to know exactly what to look for. And oftentimes esports and gaming, there's not really something especially set aside for that. There might be something tangentially related, like saying, like ed tech, right? Or thinking about different technologies in the lab spaces. A lot of the cool things we find out about are from industry sponsors, where maybe one of our corporate sponsors has interest in learning more about how their peripherals affect gameplay. And then they will specifically reach out to us because they already know us, they're already sponsoring us, and work on things together. Whereas I think people that aren't already so embedded in the space of knowing where to look for funding and grants, and knowing how to, twist the language of how they're applying to make sure that it actually works for what they're working on, there is no solution like Onside gaming that I've seen where it's, not specifically targeted toward like researchers or high schools or middle schools or colleges, or also kind of in this almost kind of more exclusive community. And so for me, like coming from gaming and esports and higher education are kind of like two of the most opposite environments that I've been in. So it's really cool being in that intersection there. But from the esports side, I think a lot of what we see with charity streams and fundraisers and like crowdsourcing and crowdfunding, and kind of looking at those mechanisms, a lot of those are very, very very fluid. There's usually just an organizer that's creating their own page, or maybe being a part of something bigger like Extra Life and kind of attaching themselves to a brand that's already doing something for charity, for donating. But there's not a lot of ways to kind of give back to the community as a whole, versus you have to kind of seek out these specific initiatives. And oftentimes, like the streamers that are hosting a lot of these charity streams are just individuals that also don't have a lot of experience really understanding like how to effectively drive the momentum behind the money that they're raising. And there's like all these awesome charities out there that you can kind of partner with. And that's what we're really seeing. But ultimately, it's like an individual that's managing finances, right? There's like one person trying to figure out, okay, I have to figure out if this charity is legit or not. I have to figure out, is it okay to take money through Venmo? Is it okay to, all these different things? And I think if the education piece of this is so important, because just sharing ways and partnering up with people and making sure that things are done in a way that's safe, and also pushing forward, this feminism really through gaming, I think is just an incredible opportunity.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. I think that the disrupting nature of this type of fund that is so open, so inclusive, and not limited to any one sector, any one type of initiative, not even any type of individual or organization, registered or unregistered, I think provides a lot of opportunities for this to be flexible and impactful in the long run. So I wish we could have this conversation, for hours, but I did want to say thank you, Jihan, Kathy, and Mariana, for your thoughtful responses and insight into making gaming and esports more inclusive through initiatives like this one. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
And it's really wonderful to be able to hear from our OGAC members about their experience as advisory committee members and their inspiration for joining this movement and pushing it forward. I do want to talk about maybe other ways if people who are on listening as to get involved in this movement, because we are really seeking to make this movement as collaborative and collective as possible, and really want to welcome any and all who want to join. Up here, there are a few ways in which people can help build the Onside gaming movement, including just sharing information, knowledge, and learning that comes out of this fund, reaching out to networks to encourage people who you think would be great candidates to apply for this funding, letting them know just about this opportunity and or contributing fundraising if you're comfortable with that. I did also want to note that we're launching a Tiltify campaign on October 21st and are looking to engage folks who are interested in supporting us through this, whether it's streaming or any other kind of fundraising event. No contribution too small. We're really just hoping to get people interested, get people invested in this, and get people excited about the launch of the fund on November 25th. And with that, I do want to open it up to any questions that there might be in the chat. If and when people, I don't know how to look at it, that people may have. Feel free to ask any and all questions. Sign me up. Love that energy. Please come join us. And then I also just wanted to pop a couple of links in the chat as well for where to find more information. The fundraising month is October 21st to November 25th, because that's when the Onside Gaming fund will open the call for applications. In terms of who's the most sus, I think that's probably Mariana.
How dare you?
An imposter for sure. And I also wanted to kind of open up the possibility for if you want to get involved in another way that you didn't see reflected here, but are just interested in learning more, feel free to reach out to me. I'll pop my email in the chat as well. Always eager to get on a call and learn more from folks in the industry. It's been a really great way for us to really develop this initiative. And so, yeah, happy to talk. Wonderful seeing the comment from Gemma. Well, thank you so much. We really feel honored and privileged to be part of the Women in Games Global Conference. This was such an awesome experience, and getting connected to you all has been such a joy. So please feel free to continue to reach out, and I think we can probably close out the session.
Thank you so much.
Bye, guys. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Check out